And I'd like to hear about the authors who grabbed your attention when you were in the larval stage of your writing career, who shaped you and inspired you to be the cracking writer you are now, and who of them would you most like to team up with? Robert Heinlein, perhaps. Heinlein, I enjoyed Heinlein a great deal. The other authors I enjoyed when I was growing up, Ray Bradbury, right at the top of the heap. Just wonderfully poetic writing for anything, but for science fiction and fantasy, extraordinary. Jack Vance, I think hugely underrated. Jack Vance, particularly his Demon Prince novels, love those. And he has essentially invented the fantasy worlds that Dungeons and Dragons are based on. But his science fiction is extremely good as well, and I think he's seriously underrated. I think he has had a profound influence on me. And you go away and read his stuff, you'll go, oh goodness me. You know, it's not so much Dune, or I love Dune, but it's not so much those things. It's probably Jack Vance. I liked who else did I like? Keith Laumer. I loved a lot of his books, like A Plague of Demons. I read very, very widely. I also love pulp adventure. So H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Clark Ashton Smith. Why have they got three names? I don't know. Love those, particularly Lovecraft. I think he's just extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary things. Very influential, but also literature of that era. I mean, I'm a very, very, very big fan of John Buchan. I think the Hannay novels particularly, everybody's heard of 39 Steps, which is the sort of classic because it's so perfect and so tiny, but it's the second in the series of 5 novels, Green Mantle, which is one of my all-time favourite books. Wonderful sort of adventure espionage stories set against the backdrop of the First World War. Brilliant stuff. Very, very much like John Wyndham. John Wyndham, the epitome of English science fiction. Superb. If you've never read any John Wyndham, read The Day of the Triffids, The Kraken Wakes, Midwich Cuckoos, Chrysalids. Who else? I mentioned Dune. I'm Frank Herbert, big fan of those. Philip Jose Farmer, I love the Riverworld books. I loved his short fiction as well, and some of his other novels. In the late 70s, early 80s, whenever it was, Julian May's Many Coloured Land. Everybody sort of opted for when the sort of the big Tolkien-esque blockbusters started in the 70s. You're either a fan of Stephen Donaldson or you're a fan of Raymond Feist or whatever. But for me, it was Julian May. The Many Coloured Land is fantastic, and that very, very influential. A lot of these are usually classed wrongly as simply children's writers, but Alan Garner, who I think is seriously underrated, brilliant writer. Got into him reading his children's books like The Withstone of Brisingamen, but it's books like Elidor, The Owl Service, and Red Shift where he starts to accelerate into a realm of English supernatural fantasy that is entirely his own, and I urge you to. His books, he's still publishing books, and I urge you to go and try them because they're fabulous. Ursula Le Guin, everybody starts off with The Wizard of Earthsea, but marvellous writing. Mervyn Peake, and also read a lot of non-genre work from a very early age and enjoyed it enormously. So I've always read very, very widely. And we must add A.A. Milne to the list because I was a huge fan of Winnie the Pooh when I was a kid. C.S. Lewis, I loved all the Narnia books. Tolkien is another obvious one. And there's a I think he's Dutch author called Paul Beagle who wrote a book called The King of the Copper Mountains, which was my favourite book when I was a kid. I think it's just been put back into publication. It's been out of print for a long, long time. If you haven't read T.H. White's Arthurian stories, Sword in the Stone and everything, that's just marvellous. Although, again, we're getting off on a tangent, but in terms of Arthurian stuff, I love the Arthur mythos, and would also recommend Mary Stewart's Arthurian stories, which are fabulous. How do you make your characters so believable and unique? I don't know, thank you for saying so. I really don't know. I sort of write them as if they're real people. I try and imagine what they would do. I mean, there's no great secret to it. I imagine these characters very, very vividly. I put them into situations where they behave according to the sort of parameters that I've set in my head about what sort of people they are, and then I sort of record what they do, and if that's believable, then fantastic. Ghost novels have a degree of detail about the minutiae of the average grunt's life. Pete Goots on Eternal KP. Brackets, he said. So I was wondering what sort of books you use as references for this, i.e. 18 Patrol by Sidney Jarry, or the Recollections of Rifleman Harris, or more modern novels, etc, etc, etc. Or do you make it up as you go along? Well, I do read documentary, non-fiction books about soldiers in every era. I'm as much likely to read one about the life of a Roman legionnaire or a Dark Age Thane as I am about a soldier in the Boer War or the 100 Years' War or whatever. Anything where there is some kind of regimented life of a fighting man, I find that very, very interesting indeed. And you pick up all sorts of different things from all sorts of different places, and I tend to lace them in sort of as and when I find them and think, oh, that's a great fact, I must use that somewhere. And I'm sure some of them in the end contradict each other. I also make it up as I go along. I make some of this stuff up. I make it up in a way that seems or feels right to me. And weirdly, that's one of the things that gets commented on sometimes when I meet servicemen or veteran servicemen, and they say, how did you know that? And I think, that was actually one of the things I invented. Made up, as it were. And it's weird to discover that it's real. Looking back at the stories you've written, is there any one thing you would have changed, e.g. not kill the character, write more of a certain character, etc.? Anything I would have changed? I can't think of any, to be fair. And I think that way madness lies, because if you start second guessing what you might have done or would have done, when you make a decision as a writer, as soon as that's published, you've got to stick to that. The get out of jail free in comics, of course, is that almost any character you kill in a comic book you can bring back eventually. I can't think of any one of them where I've gone, oh, I wish I hadn't bumped them off or done that to a person. Recommend just one book for us all to read by any author. Magic for Beginners by Kelly Link, collection of Kelly Link short stories. Kelly Link's only written, well, she's actually only written 2.5 books. There are 3 collections of short stories, and the third one has new stories in it, but also some stories that have been published before. She's fantastic. I think she's an absolutely amazing writer. How do you go about writing female characters? Are they written the same as male characters, or do you require a female insight? Anna Kurth and especially Patience Kiss are my favourite. Whose are yours and why? You see, you asked me a question like that about something that I've never actually consciously thought about how I do it before. I just write these books. I write the characters. I don't think, oh, it's a woman character. How am I going to do that? I just write the characters. I hope I get them right, and I hope I'm vaguely convincing and authentic and accurate about it. Now you've said it, I'm going to start thinking twice before I think, oh, this is a girl. How should I get? Oh. But I really don't do that. They're all. I'm an equal opportunities writer. I don't think about gender or anything like that. I'm glad you like Anna Kurth. I think Anna Kurth is a particularly convincing female character. Interesting you picked Patience Kiss. Patience Kiss is a brilliant character. I think she's very masculine, actually, because she does all the things the boys do, but there you go. Who's are yours and why? My favourite female characters? Well, I like both of those characters. Cara Swole and Elizabeth Beckwin are both huge favourites. Tona Creed. Tona Creed plays a big part in Blood Pact. Ryan said, in your opinion, do you think that entering a short story competition and hopefully winning is worth a budding writer's time? Absolutely. Or do publishing companies not really care how many of them you've won? No, the point of the doing any of those things, I think, is a wonderful exercise if you want to be a writer anyway, because it gives you a goal and it gives you a sort of challenge to accomplish and that kind of stuff. So that in itself is a really good reason for doing it. You set yourself a task, you see if you can manage the task, which is great from the point of view of learning how to be a professional writer. Publishing companies, do they really care? Well, I think they probably do. Certainly Black Library's competition, the prize is to be published and to have that sort of olive branch extended to you. So really, really worth doing that. I think Henry Zhu, who's just had his first novel published, was a competition winner. Would you ever considering adapting an existing novel into a comic as a project? Or would you prefer to tell a new story? I can't imagine what novel I'd ever want to adapt into a comic. Not even one of my own, really. That's a strange thing to do. That's completely different from writing a comic or writing a novel. Is adapting one into the other. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the 9 pages of questions that everyone was kind enough to send me. So thank you very much. I hope I've answered everything. If I've missed you off, I do apologise. It was not my intention, and if I've not answered your question fully enough, again I apologise. This isn't the last time we're going to do this. There will be more opportunities for questions and more opportunities for me to sit and talk at you. And who knows, at some point I might sit down here with the first chapter of Triumph and actually read you a bedtime story. How does that sound? Alright, thank you very much. See you soon.